We have built a culture around transactional romance. We measure affection through physical proximity, legal contracts, and social validation. But consider what happens to the human experience when a society forgets the spiritual architecture of connection, leaving only biological urges or social obligations. To find a counterexample, we look to an ancient narrative. In her final days, an elderly woman named Radha lived in isolation along this ancient riverfront in Vrindavan. She spent her time alone, waiting for a man who had left decades prior, Krishna. Hundreds of miles away, beneath the towering temple flags of Dwarka, Krishna possessed every material advantage a ruler could want. Yet, despite his absolute power, he experienced a severe, unexplainable psychological void. Their decades of geographical separation never severed the tie. Their connection operated on a frequency independent of physical proximity or validation from the people around them. Eventually, that internal pull forced Krishna to abandon his throne. He traveled back to that isolated hut, arriving just in time to hold Radha's hand as her breathing slowed and she passed away. Before she died, Radha made a specific vow. She promised to return to the physical world when humanity's grasp of connection degraded entirely into superficiality. This diagram illustrates the Hindu cosmological view of cyclical time. Here, reincarnation serves a distinct mechanical purpose. It functions as a system to inject lost truths back into a decaying society, completing the cycle. In the spot where Radha died, locals noted a strange phenomenon. A brilliantly glowing tulsi plant took root, standing as a physical marker of an energy that was merely lying dormant. Radha's death functioned as a calculated failsafe, a mechanism set to trigger when the collective memory of love finally hit zero. Eras later, that trigger was pulled. The society that emerged operated on rigid dogma and physical transactions. The concept of a spiritual bond had been erased from the cultural memory. Into this environment, a village girl named Lalita was born. Without any instruction, she could perfectly replicate complex, ancient flute melodies, the exact tunes Krishna used to play. At the same time, a strict celibate monk named Anantanand was living in isolation. From these remote mountains, he preached a message that confused his followers, that real connection requires the sacrifice of the soul. Both Lalita and Anantanand suffered from a psychological tension. They were experiencing a phantom limb syndrome of the psyche, searching for a counterpart they couldn't consciously identify or remember. Think of this setup as a blind experiment. By removing memory, geography, and physical identity, the system tests a single variable, whether two entities can locate each other using nothing but a shared frequency. This internal pull forced Lalita to leave her village. She traveled for months, playing her flute, until the acoustic signature of that specific melody reached Anantanand's ears across vast distances. They finally crossed paths in a place called Vrindadam. There was no formal introduction. They recognized each other instantly, through a silent resonance that bypassed logical explanation. This immediate recognition alarmed the local authorities. A powerful sage named Kuringnath saw their unexplainable bond as a threat to the established moral and religious order. Kuringnath devised an impossible challenge to expose them as frauds. Lalita would be permanently blindfolded. She had to navigate the region and locate Anantanand without a single visual or physical clue. For days, Lalita walked blind through shifting environments. She moved with confidence, guided by an invisible internal compass. Lalita bypassed the physical entirely. While Kuringnath mimicked the voice and a face in an attempt to trick her, he could not replicate the resonance that Lalita used to find her target. By succeeding, Lalita demonstrated that her recognition of Anantanand existed outside the five senses. It proved that their connection functioned as a reliable form of navigation, independent of any physical trait. Passing the test did not grant them freedom. The final obstacle was institutional rejection. The two were dragged before the king to face formal judgment. The public was outraged. A sworn celibate monk and an uneducated village girl claiming an eternal bond was a violation of the era's strict compartmentalized social laws. This diagram illustrates the ideological collision. Society operated on rigid vertical hierarchies of laws and contracts. Lalita and Untold, however, were operating on a horizontal plane of pure connection. Standing before the throne, Untold argued their bond existed entirely outside physical attachment. This placed their connection in a category that the state's legal framework simply wasn't designed to measure. Listening to this defense triggered a memory for the king. He recalled the ancient stories of Radha and Krishna, recognizing the exact philosophical dynamic playing out in his own courtroom. The king delivered a surprising verdict. He ruled that while marriage and social contracts are necessary administrative tools for a functioning society, the connection between these two was governed by an older, superseding law. The narrative of Lalita and Untold operates as a philosophical blueprint. It forces us to examine our own transactional metrics of romance, illustrating that beneath the social metrics of romance lies a persistent resonance.